Hey everybody, it's Frank McLaughlin, and thank you for joining me on this Sunday afternoon. I wanted to start by saying a little bit about selecting pigeons. If you're going to select your birds, make it easier for yourself. Select very corky, buoyant, medium-sized, great feathered pigeons. Not too much bulk, not too much back, not too much bone. Many select for show qualities over racing qualities. So if possible, select pigeons that don't gain weight. And the game becomes a lot easier if your pigeons stay lean, stay buoyant, corky, don't gain body weight. And I know that I select for this, and sometimes my breeding pigeons they may not necessarily be like that, but will breed pigeons that are light and corky and airy. And again, it makes the game a lot easier. And if you're entering one-loft races, usually the birds are overfed and undertrained. So pigeons that don't gain weight really help the situation. And a lot of what I do is with feeding, very little training. So I need pigeons that stay lean and corky on their own. Another suggestion or something to look at people. You could feed everyone the same 2,000 calories a day. And some of the people are going to be lean and athletic, and others are going to be heavy on the same amount of calories. So if you look at your breeders like you'd be looking at people, maybe you can kind of have that mindset. Select the athletic, select the corky, select the buoyant type birds. So we'll get started with some questions here. The first question I have, when you start with the hens at the beginning of the year, do you loft fly? If not, how far is your training toss? I didn't let my birds out before the old bird season, and I didn't let them out at all the entire season. So they had no loft flying. I get their body weight down and I take them. My first toss is probably a quarter mile. I might go there twice and then go a half mile, a mile. But again, they're nice and light and buoyant when I start. I get them out, I get them home, and I get them in, mainly because the hawks are so bad that time of year. So my birds never made a circle the whole old bird season. And most of the old bird season, they raced. They had one training toss during the week, no loft fly, and they raced. And they flew terrific. Some weeks I had 2 training tosses. Most of the time it was 1 training toss. I took a few questions before this started. People sent them over. They couldn't attend the live stream. After weaning your first round from the stock birds, do you treat for anything while sitting on eggs on the second round? No. As many of you know, I don't flock treat ever. I will individually treat the birds. I never flock treat the birds. It's been over 10 years. The birds keep getting stronger. I vaccinate for everything. I give them all the nutrition, the minerals they need, but no flock treating. Same with the babies. I know some people wean the babies, give them a canker tab, and I wean them, I vaccinate them, I make sure they're not stressed. I put all the feed they want in front of them, all the little seeds. I'm not forcing them to eat big stuff when they get weaned. I think that's an old wives' tale. I've said it a million times. I've never seen an adult pigeon in my life that wouldn't eat peas and corn. So no, I don't do anything to the breeders, just natural health. I do use a few natural products, but even that, I'm getting away from that. Another question I took, I'm a small flyer, and I fly against the mob flyer. Best training method, what to do about the drag and how to compete. Well, if I was a small flyer, I would really work on getting my pigeons to break. So I put a link below to Educating Young Birds. You want to work on getting your pigeons to break. You want to mix them. You want to find a fancier that you can train with that cause the birds to split. Even if he's not in the correct direction of the race course, it doesn't matter. You could go north, south. You could meet in the middle and toss your birds together where his birds have to go north, your birds have to go south. You want to work on teaching your birds to break. I use a truck training toss for that. I use a truck that's about 40 miles south of me. And the first many times my birds get sucked into the south, but after 5 or 6 times, I'm getting them the same time as everybody else at the same distance. So they're breaking. I'm not sure where they're breaking, but they learn to break. The other thing, if you want to be competitive, your birds have to fly to the front, and they have to fly to the front with a high speed. So you have to nail the body weight. they have to be super light and corky and buoyant. There's a fine line between super light and corky with enough energy. Once you nail that, the birds will fly. The other birds can't keep with them. And again, this is more relevant as you get farther out, a little more distance on the pigeons. They'll pull away. So if they're flying to the front and they're flying by themselves, there's nowhere else to go but to home. So I think a small flyer can beat the bigger type flyer, especially once you get out 200 or 300 miles. What would you prefer when breeding pigeons? Natural pairing or selective pairing? Colony breeding or cage breeding? Which is the best? Now, I've done a couple of videos on this, and I put it down below. Pigeons are a colony animal. They're happiest in groups. I tried the whole individual breeding pen thing. I don't like it. My best pigeons didn't seem to produce. I like breeding in a colony. I like small breeding teams of really high-end pigeons. I also like to let my pigeons select their own mates. I've said it before, you select the woman or man of your dreams, and you're a lot more enthusiastic about it than if someone said, well, you have to marry her, you have to marry him. So I think pigeons that select their own mates, they know better than us. I do colony breeding, and except for special pairings and for sale birds and stuff like that, my birds select their own mates. Where do the genes of young birds come from? More from the mother or the father? Well, I would say that the mother gives more of a body to the bird. So if you have really nice hens, they tend to pass more of the physical to the bird. The boys can have, maybe a little weaker or a little more awkward. The hens are more important for the physical end of the babies. And I also think the hens give slightly more in the immune system in the egg than the male. Now, the immune system is both genetic and some of it's passed through crop milk in the egg. I feel the hens give a little bit more because they produce the egg. So if you get a superstar hen with a great immune system, great genetics, she's probably passing more of that to the baby. How much more? Not that much more, a little bit more. And we'll take some questions in the feed. Let's see. Thanks for the great tip on flying. Where am I at with young bird training? I haven't started yet. I'm going to start training my young birds this week. I'm going to go very slow. The convention race I'm handling for is like November 2nd to 3rd. I have plenty of time. Most of my competitors have been tearing it up through the heat of the summer. They're hurting their birds. They're losing their birds. We just had the weather break, less humidity. So I'll get them started. I'll go slow, and I'll be just fine. It's a one race season for me. I'm just preparing these birds for the convention. I don't care about the other races. I fly once a day. My pigeons during the races season. Which mix would be best, Jerry Plus or D Pure Plus? Thank you for advance. Well, if anybody exercises more than once a day, you're exercising way too much. I hear fancy as, I fly them in the morning. I fly them in the afternoon. I race them. Way too much. If you feed them correctly, you can exercise a couple times a week between races. And once Fancy has realized this, it makes the game so much easier. Now, years back, the fanciers, even today, the fanciers that, he gets to train, he's training all the time, he works them really hard. Well, the reason he's working them so hard is that he's feeding them so heavy. So the guy who works them hard is going to have an advantage over the person that can't work them so hard if they're feeding the same. You feed like I feed, and the workload goes way down. I like to keep it simple, and if you followed my videos, and there's some links below on how I feed, my master feeding for both long distance and short distance, and how I prepped my birds for the long distance races. It's pretty remarkable how little they're actually exercising and still performing at the highest level. If I had a choice between Jerry Plus and D Pure is 5 times better than Jerry Plus. So feed the D Pure. Can you still find great birds without a great pedigree? Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's fanciers that have excellent pigeons and they're not into pedigrees, or I don't get too caught up in pedigrees, although I like to see a lot of good pigeons in the family. I like to see the uncles winning, the aunts, cousins, great-grandparents. You want to see generations of winners. You don't really need the pedigree. There's a lot of great pigeons. You don't have to get caught up on a fad or a phase or chase the new hot thing, because there's super pigeons. There's a lot more super pigeons than super fanciers, and much of it is learning how to get them in the best position to win. If you can put the good ones in position to win, you'll have success. Now, I find many fanciers go years without ever putting their pigeons in position to win. And most of the time, it's just they're too heavy. They're too fat and round for the races. They have no chance. So you have to put them in position to win. And if you put them in position to win, you'll have a lot of success. Let's see. A nice thank you for I appreciate it. I've been having issues with one-eye colds this year. Any suggestions of what to treat with and the root cause and try to fix the issue? Well, I always get a few on my young bird team. I had several convention birds. One of my videos, I actually showed a convention bird with a one-eye cold. A lot of it, or some of it, is ventilation. Sometimes you can have the best ventilation in the world and you'll still get one-eye colds. I treat with LA200. It's an oxytetracycline. They sell it at Tractor Supply by the little 100 ml bottle, and it's a yellow antibiotic. I'll put 0.4 of an ml in a syringe. It's just a little bit in the syringe. 0.4. Don't go crazy. And I inject them behind the neck, and within 2 days, the one-eye cold is gone. Any respiratory is gone. Rattles, any kind of runny nose. It wipes it out, and that'll be it. The bird will be cured. If the bird gets sick again, it's not going to amount to anything. But I usually give them one chance. I will treat individually. I won't flock treat. And I like to give them one chance. Again, I'm handling convention birds this year, so they're going to have as many chances as they need. But normally with my own pigeons, it's a one chance type of thing. When you start young bird training, how many times a week do you train until they get out to 30 miles? Well, if they're coming home well and they're not, spending a lot of time on the wing, you can go every day. And I would suggest going 2 or 3 times a day if you have time. If you have a Saturday and you take them a mile and they come home in 10 minutes, throw them a handful of feed, give them 20 minutes, take them back. You could take them 3 or 4 times in a day and inch them out if the weather's cool. And if my birds tend to fly an hour or more, I give them a day off. So that's kind of my guide. Fly an hour, day off. And then you're not going to burn them up. So, and then on the days off, I don't loft fly the birds. Once I start training, there won't be any loft flying. I've been loft flying my youngsters just because I'm trying to get them in some sort of fitness before I start training. And they're well broke and they're well settled. But I have been loft flying them. But once I start training, I will no longer loft fly. How many times a week do you train to get them out to 30 miles? It'll take me probably 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks to get them to 30 miles, I would think. I go slow. I like to go different directions. If I can train a couple times on the same day, that's good. If you get the perfect day and you can take them 3 times in the same morning, do it. It's not going to hurt them if they're only flying 10, 15, 20 minutes. If anything, you can save a lot of time by doing it like that. Do you need high-powered pigeons like Kittles, GFL, Hoymans to be competitive in one-loft races? No, there's a lot of great pigeons out there. I mean, those are all excellent pigeons you mentioned, but those pigeons get a lot of press. And again, they're super birds. But if anything, yeah, look and find something different. There's a lot of great pigeons. And you'll find that you'll see these pigeons. There's a high percentage of certain pigeons in one-loft races. And then the results get a little jaded because there's a lot of birds in those pedigrees. But, if 20%, 30% of the same bird, there's going to be a lot of them scoring. But there's plenty of great one-loft pigeons out there. And there's plenty of great fanciers that have success with different strains of pigeons in one-loft races. Hi, you give 80% Versalager, pure, and what is the other feed? If you're going to mix your own feed for the racing season, I would mix 80% barley, a high-quality barley, with like a 20% breeder conditioner mix, like a Versalager Champion or something along those lines. So that's what I feed during the racing season. I also use the D-Pure. It's a Vercel lager depurative. And that's just simple for me. They eat that. My youngsters are on that now. They'll get that 7 days a week. And then after the race, they'll get the rich feeds, but the rest of the time they're on the depurative. And again, I don't push them. I'm not pounding them down the road. If they did have a long flight, I would probably add more of the rich seeds. If they flew a couple of hours, I'd have to feed them more. If you're out there, if you hit the like button, I think that helps me. And after this, if you could share the video, I'm going to put links below on topics that I touched upon, and some of my favorite videos will be below. And you can tell your friends and give it a look. What do you think of Bayer's Galaxy Light? I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with it. Maybe if you can email me a photo of it, I'll take a look, or what's in it. I'm sure if it's a Galaxy, it may be a good feed, but I like feed with a lot of barley, if you can believe it. If you watch my videos, you understand why. When you start young bird training, where do you start? 1 mile, and how do you go up on the tosses and miles? Well, I start it's literally on the next street. It's probably 1/4 mile. My lofts sit in a hole of pine trees. It's not a great location. My birds don't route, and they've never routed from this location. So they'll circle, but they've never routed. When I lived in the city as a kid, they routed like crazy. When I moved the birds to Oregon, they routed like crazy. At this location, some locations, the birds just don't route. So I go really slow. On my first toss, I'll drive them all around, and I'll let them go in the backyard because they get car sick the first time, and they're in a frenzy. When they're in the baskets for the first time, they get nervous. But if you saw one of my most recent videos, I have a shipping basket in my young bird loft with a feeder behind it. So the basket has become part of the loft. They go in the basket. They're learning to eat and drink from the basket. So they get much more comfortable with the basket, but they're still not comfortable with a car. So the first toss is in the yard. And then I'll take them maybe a couple of times from 1/4 mile and a 1/2 mile, and I inch them out. I really go slow. And that's why I'm not so concerned about, week 1, week 2. You'd be better off taking your time and giving up the first couple races and having more success at the end. Let's see. Hi, listen to your advice. First year racing, did great in the club races. Well, that's great, Chelsea. Congratulations. And I'm happy that you had luck, and hopefully I can help a little bit. Great info, thanks, Frank. I read this in the Secrets a couple of years ago, but I had it forgotten. Much appreciated. It's probably the LA 200. In my website, I have a lot of articles, and there's a page I call it my Secrets page. It's 60 or 70 short paragraph tips of things that I do that may be helpful. I noticed the Southern Wing Combat race is the same as it was many years ago with the Hawks. With the Hawks, wouldn't it be advantageous to move it slightly to assume the food has concentrated them? Yeah, it's funny. We race from west to east, and it goes northwest, then it goes more west. As we hit the Great Lakes, we have to drop south. But the problem with my combine and racing in most places is you have to race the highways. We have Interstate 90, so we race the truck down the highway. So, I'm sure the Falcons get used to the race birds coming across, and it's a little scary when you're putting very successful birds out. Can a bird that placed bad in Victoria Falls still produce the first place winner? Yes. Those pigeons that finished Victoria Falls are really good pigeons. I handled 230 of them or somewhere in that area, and they're excellent pigeons. They finished the series. They went through the series. There's a lot of obstacles. It was a tough year, and you're better off breeding from a pigeon like that than a pigeon you're not sure if it can even come home. So if you get a one loft performer, maybe it wasn't a great performer, but more often than not, you got a better chance with that than a pigeon that's never been on the race course in its life. Yeah, you can't go wrong with those. They're a little expensive though. Yeah, this Pipa is going to be selling the best or some of the top 230. Then after that, I got to select. I think I selected 45 or 48 for my website, you may have seen bestpigeons.com. So we're going to have an auction of the next group. I picked strictly superstar names. All the best names in the sport will have it, but the people picked like performance and superstar names. And they're going to have one heck of an auction because the birds were so nice and the race season was so tough. What is step number one in finding breeding stock to add to your loft? Well, I would go to a really successful fancier, and you can go to someone in your area. Sometimes birds that are performed in your area will perform in your race course. I also don't like to go to what I call the real professionals. Some fanciers, they spend all day with the birds. I mean, they train when they want, they exercise when they want, they're messing with them all the time. Find a fancier that's working, that's still successful and doesn't have a ton of time for the pigeons. And I would even suggest buying off the race team, like at the end of the season, see if you can buy some young birds off the widowers or something like that, and go for late hatches. Late hatches are always the least expensive. I've always bought late hatches throughout my career, and they're great. Sometimes, it takes a little while to get them started, but you're going to get the best deal. They're not picked over. And believe me, every pigeon looks good at 6 months old or a year. But, if they look awesome at 6 weeks old, 30 days old, they're really nice pigeons. And I think it's easy to pick birds from young birds than it is from more mature pigeons. Can you glue back a broken primary? Yes, I've done it a few times. Like you've had a primary break off, and if you can get pretty much the same feather, and you have a couple of options. I used, which I'm not sure if was the best or not, I took a paper clip. I clipped a piece of paper clip, maybe 3/4 of an inch, with some super glue, and you'll put the paper clip in one end and line the flight up perfectly on the other. Now, I'm not sure if that piece of metal was the best for that bird to be flying with. It does have magnets in its, brain, the base of its beak. So you'd be probably better off finding something, maybe like a toothpick, which I think would still hold up, a real strong, or a plastic type toothpick, something that thin, strong plastic that can take the wear and tear, but you can replace flights. The problem with pigeons with broken flights, and it happens to me all the time, is I'll have a bird that breaks a flight or loses a flight, or the hawks single them out. Like when that hawk is hitting the flock or the falcon is hitting the flock, if there's a bird with a blemish, that's the one that's going to get taken. And I did a video on a cock. There was a Badge of Courage video, a really good 4-year-old bird, and he had the first secondary flight. When a bird flies and pushes through the pain of a race, and a flight will get deformed. And sometimes on both sides, it'll be the first primary flight, sometimes the secondary flight, but it'll be deformed. It'll never grow back right. So I was all excited about the pigeon. I shipped him to a 400-mile race right after I did the video, and he never came home. But I think that blemish, I think that flight was his downfall. I think he was singled out because he had the blemish in the wing. Thoughts that breeders that don't produce races but great breeders are still worth keeping? Yeah, absolutely. If you find something that produces breeders, why not? That's excellent. What I find is, and I've found it many years, that when you bring in imports, say you bring in imports from Belgium, many times the direct children are just okay, but the children tend to breed better than the parents. I used to say that I should probably import the birds, breed a couple rounds, and then sell the breeders and breed from the children. But hey, if it's producing breeders, go for it. What do you have to lose? If I could ask everybody to hit the like button, supposedly it helps me with the algorithm. I'm having a blast with YouTube. I hope everybody's enjoying it, and I'll keep the videos coming. Let's see. Do you use red cell for the food or the water? No, I put red cell. It's a horse vitamin. I use it mainly for the iodine, but it's high in iron. It's been around since I started the sport in the 70s. It was probably older than that. And I use a teaspoon to the gallon. I don't like to overdo it. I think if you put it on the grain, it's a little too concentrated. So I tend to just use a teaspoon to the gallon. I put it in the water. I usually do red cell once a week, all the time, year round. And great product. Really excellent, excellent product. Could you please tell us about the Bird in Africa Pro McLaughlin 22 1461? Yeah, not really. I'm not even sure what it is at this point, but I'll try to look it up and get some info on those pigeons as we get closer. Study the falconry technique of imping for feather repair. Bamboo works best. I'm a master falconer. Well, Bob, that's great. If you could maybe put that in out there or email me, and I could even do a video if it'll help fanciers, or maybe you could do it yourself. But repairing feathers, if falconers can do it, there's got to be a way to do it that's better than what I try to do. I have a pair of 2019 breeders that didn't produce any eggs this year. Is it more likely the hen? Yeah. I mean, there would be the hen. That's kind of a heartbreak when a good hen stops laying. I have a superstar hen that I was very valuable hen that she laid 4 eggs this year and hasn't laid an egg since. She looks like $1 million, and I've tried several things, but so far no luck. But yeah, it's the hen. I wouldn't give up on her. I would buy the salmonella vaccine. It's the KM1. Dr. K produces it. You can buy it at, like VitaKing products. It's the KM1 salmonella vaccine. Do a milliliter. The dose is 1/4 milliliter. Do a milliliter. Hit the bird twice a week for 3 weeks. It has an adjuvant in it. It causes a massive immune response in the pigeons. And I even use that to cure if you get a lump in a pigeon's wing from salmonella. If you give a milliliter twice a week for 3 weeks, usually within a month or so after that, the lump is gone. And it will also help bring back fertility in pigeons. Now, I'm not sure if it's a combination of the vaccine or the adjuvant, I think it's called, that causes a massive immune response. But whatever it is, it's positive. So I would try that. I would also treat the bird. She might have an infection in the ovaries, and you may want to put it on an enrofloxacin, which is a Baytril, for maybe 10 days to see if you can clear the infection out of the ovaries. And then hopefully next season, after doing the salmonella vaccine and a good Baytril treatment, you'll mate her and she'll lay as normal. How come the American bloodlines aren't as popular as the imports? Well, that's just the grass is always greener. When I first started going to Belgium in the 80s, America didn't have the pigeons that they had in Europe. I mean, I was blown away when I saw the health and the condition of those pigeons. And now America has just as good as anywhere else in the world, maybe even better than most places. There's been so many great pigeons that have come into the U.S. over the years. So you can find great pigeons here. You don't have to go anywhere else. And they're every bit as good. And now what's happening is some of the really sharp Europeans are buying American birds and they're shipping them back and having success back over in Belgium or wherever. So we have great pigeons here. But again, the grass is always greener. It's so much more exciting waiting on an import to come from Belgium than it is to buy one from, your neighbor in the combine. How come we don't see the American dominating the Africa One Loft races or the big One Loft races? Well, we did. Back in when the $1 million race was going strong, when I still worked for them, I managed to nail the health in the birds. I had no health issues shipping like 1,000 birds to the $1 million race. And then the country, America, USA was the country to beat. I mean, Mike Gannis won, Tom Schilling won, multiple birds at the top, multiple car race winners, so much success. So much of the reason for or against success is what happens along the process. You want to get the birds there as healthy and is best possible condition without any health problems. If a young bird sickness runs through the flock, you can pretty much write off that group. They're not going to have success. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. And it's difficult. It's a lot easier to send pigeons, across the country, across the town than it is to export them to another country. But I know when I was exporting to the South African $1 million, and I did drop out a couple of years before they ripped everybody off. I don't want you to think that I was there to the end. I stopped 2 years before the race went belly up. But when I was exporting to that race, the birds got there in super healthy condition, and the results were just fabulous for the USA. Let's say a large media hit your lofts. Where are you going to restart? I would go to Belgium, and I would go to and buy some from top fanciers, not necessarily the big famous names. The neighbors have just as good pigeons, or there's plenty of people you've never heard of that the famous names are going and buying their birds and adding them to their stock. And but I would go to Belgium and I would pick super buoyant, super feathered pigeons, not too much back, not too big. And the gray ones have a muscle texture that is unlike the good ones. The good ones, there's a lot of good ones, a lot of really good ones, but the great ones, there's a muscle texture that I see so few and far between. And if I could get my hands on that muscle texture, that's what I'm going to select. And I used to think, I said, I'd love to go to Belgium with $1 million and just buy exactly what I wanted. Just go to everybody's loft and buy the one best pigeon that they have. I mean, it's not feasible, but they are there. They're few and far between, but the great ones are just a little different. You're asking American bloodlines? I mean, there's a lot of good. If I was going to buy birds in America, there's a lot of top lofts. There's a lot of great pigeons in America, and you wouldn't have to go anywhere else. There's as good here as anywhere else. But again, the grass is always greener. It's fun getting an import. Have you ever had a successful races breeding close relatives, a father, daughter, mother, son? As for inbreeding racers, no, I haven't had much luck. I got away from inbreeding. I inbreed mainly for sale because everybody wants inbred pigeons. If you watch some of my videos, the real superstars pack as many unrelated pigeons in the pedigree as possible. Don't inbreed. And if you are going to inbreed, you better be inbreeding both the mother and the father are super successful. Don't inbreed for the sake of, I've got a son of this one and it's inbred to that one and I'm going to put them together. If the performance isn't there, you're wasting your time. Don't inbreed unless you have super performance. You may have some luck if you're inbreeding from two great, like a super breeder or a super racer. Me, I'd rather have two unrelated superstars, buy the youngster from that. Believe me, your odds are much greater of getting an excellent pigeon if there's two unrelated superstars bred together. And I can say all the great game-changing pigeons that we speak about for years and years and years and years are all crosses. They went on to be amazing breeders, superstar producers for generations after generations for many. They're all total crosses. And I did a video on talking about that. If you want to take a look, I don't think I could probably add it to the links below. But again, as many unrelated superstars as you can pack in the pedigree and your chances of success are going to go way up. Let's see. Yeah, crows are a very good hawk deterrent. I know a lot of people feed eggs to crows, and they do help. I've tried the decoys and stuff, but the hawks tend to get used to them. And I have these black chickens, these Ayam Samani chickens. They're black meat, they're one of my hobbies. Black comb, black meat, black insides. They're jet black feather. So I'm free ranging some of those at the lofts to hopefully that, they'll intimidate the Cooper's hawks a little bit because they're very crow-like and they are jet black. Let's see. Thank you, Craig, for asking everybody to hit the like button. I appreciate that. Somebody's asked, what is imping? I think Bob will show us maybe what they do with falcons. If you could have one bird from history past and present, any loft in the world, which one would it be? If you could have one bird from history's past, I think, and I bought a hen, I think if I could go back in time and get one pigeon, would probably be the Cannibal. It's a pigeon of my lifetime, and a pigeon that I saw. I bought back in 2003. So we're going back 20 years ago. I visited Dirk Van Dyke, and I ordered from the Cannibal, his brother Borges, and Rambo, his father. And before my number came up to get the pigeons, the Borges and Rambo went sterile. But the funny thing is, this is 20 years ago, from the best pigeon in the world, I think I paid €750 for my daughter of the Cannibal. What would that bird be worth today? €50,000 probably. From like, there's been very few breeders in the history of the sport like the Cannibal. And I guess if I could go back, and if you ever get into a time capsule and you can get back to Dirk Van Dyke's loft when the Cannibal's just a baby, go buy that pigeon. Can an ugly bird still produce great races? Absolutely. There was a story that Super Crack Cruson, a Super Crack Gruson, depending on who you talk to, was a Robert Venus pigeon. And Gruson, a Cruson, again, some people call him one thing, some people call the other, was getting out of the sport. Everybody picked over all the birds, and there was one bird left nobody wanted, and that went on to be like the double national winner. And amazing breeding pigeon, an ugly little cock that they all thought was a hen. And there's the there's that Ad Shalikin's famous hen that nobody liked, and she's behind all kinds of superstars. And this was 30, 40 years ago, but I'm trying to think of the name of the bird. But yeah, until you really try them, unless there's super weaknesses with the birds, like low vented, wide vented bird, tail that comes up and hits you in the face when you handle the bird. If the bird is structurally fairly sound, and, sometimes it's worth a try. You never know. The Victoria Falls trip looked like a dream. Birds are doing really well. 1240 has said, well, thank you, Andre. The Victoria Falls trip was awesome. I would recommend do it once. Go on that trip. Go to Victoria Falls. Go to Zimbabwe. Experience the race. Stay an extra week. Go on safari. That race is held right in a national park, and you're there, and there's elephant walking by. Zimbabwe is real Africa. It's unbelievable. It's really, we went fishing in the Zambezi River. You're fishing with hippos. You're fishing with crocodiles. Along the banks, we saw a leopard. Incredible time. Great people. Great event. Tough race. They do everything right. They have 18 helpers. They have the director who's a superstar pigeon flyer. They have the trainer. And yet it's really difficult. I mean, no matter how hard they try, it's a difficult series. And my heart bleeds for those people because nobody works harder at it. And but yeah, enter the race and visit. Go one time. Put it on your bucket list, and you won't be sorry. Oh, yeah. Sissy was the bird I was thinking about. That's good. We got the young people that Sissy was the Ad Shalakin's hen that nobody liked. And, I think he tried to sell her and sold her and got her back, and nobody wanted her, and she went on to breed, all kinds of superstars. So you just never know. I mean, just because the bird is ugly doesn't mean it's not good. What do you prefer, one loft or club racing? What do you think tests the bird better? I fly in CJC. It might be one of the greatest tests. CJC is some super competition. I mean, I enjoy one loft racing, but I'm not crazy. Like, I only follow the results for the final race. I don't follow all season. I don't pay attention to the training tosses. Some people live and die off every 40-mile training toss. I like racing my own birds, but I do both. Nothing more exciting than seeing your birds come home on a race. And my brother helps me. He's a huge, huge help. He's a good pigeon man. And without him, I wouldn't have the success because, I'm pretty busy, and he runs them to the club. He gives them minerals. He locks up the traps. He'll train them. Usually he'll run them out for training when we train, which isn't often, but he will train them. So both are great. If I raced in CJC, I would love it. My numbers keep dropping in this area. Years ago, we'd have 200 lofts and many more New England Opens. And now, to get 70 or 80 lofts is difficult, which is sad. I mean, I was one of the young flyers 50 years ago, and I'm still one of the young flyers. So that's not saying much. But the one loft is the next evolution of the sport. I think it's going to bring in more and more young people where you can keep pigeons. You can enter them in one loft races. You can follow them on your phone. And we're not too many years away where we're going to be following them live. We're going to be sitting on our computer screen and we're going to be watching the race. So that's going to change. That's going to bring in a whole bunch of tech kids. That would probably be something that interests my son if he could watch the race live and it was a technology thing. Which race and pigeon of the past had the biggest impact on our sport? It's tough to say. I mean, I think in the last 30 years, it's probably been the Cannibal has been the most influential pigeon in the sport. And but there's been some great pigeons, many great pigeons. The 231 of Engels, the Fleur Engels cock. Great pigeon, one of the best breeders of all time in Belgium. You know, Blixum of Gabby Vendenabila, superstar pigeon. There's been a lot of them. And let's see. I had a good chat with the Coopers. Yeah, the Coopers they're a pain, boy. The Falcons are worse, but we're getting more and more of them locally. But the Coopers, keep the birds busy. Let's see. Are the Jermaine and Breck birds any good? Yeah, I had some great results with them years ago. I mean, I think he got older and, maybe the birds weren't as good as they were back in the 80s. They were amazing pigeons. But, yeah, I mean, there's still some good ones, I'm sure. But they're blended into other families at this point. I can't understand how often total smash races here in the Philippines. Just this week, 3 clubs had smash races at early laps, less than 250 kilometers. Only 2% of the birds managed to enter the final lap. Yeah, that's scary. I know in a lot of places like the Philippines, they race a series of races, and the birds have to race week after week. And sometimes they liberate in any conditions. And, yeah, I mean, it's tough when you have a smash race like that. It's pretty scary and discouraging. What is your opinion on buying unvaccinated birds? Is it reasonable to ask for a vaccination when buying birds? I think that if any fancier is not vaccinating their birds at weaning, then they're making a big mistake. I mean, you have to, at minimum, you have to vaccinate for PMV. It is frightening. PMV will run through your birds, will wipe you out. And I've seen it, I had 10 late hatches that I didn't vaccinate. I've told the story before. And my birds are 10 minutes from my barn where I keep like the auction birds. Well, I promised somebody I would export some fancy birds. They came into the barn. This was years ago. And a few days later, their heads are spinning. They had PMV. So a few of the birds in the barn also got PMV, and they were vaccinated pigeons, which told me a lot that, even though they're vaccinated, it's not surefire that they're not going to get PMV. Well, 10 minutes from where my barn is, where I go to the pigeon lofts, I had 10 late breds that I weaned them late. I never vaccinated. I said, I'll get to it. Well, all 10 of them got PMV. So just the PMV on my clothes, on my shoes or whatever, went from property to property and got those birds. So yeah, you have to, I would be adamant about fanciers vaccinating their birds, and don't even take a bird in if it's not vaccinated, at least for PMV. A lot of times you have to trust the person, but usually when I bring a pigeon in, I'll vaccinate it for PMV. I'll worm it, I'll spray it for parasites, and that's what I'll do. Let's see. I'm in Maine and having a problem finding barley. What else you could use in place of barley? Well, Neil, patty rice might be more difficult to find than barley. I know the Europeans started using patty rice with great results, and that's only because it was very similar to barley. It's a tough call. I mean, you should try to round some up. I know a lot of the supply houses sell it. It's been out everywhere. I couldn't even get it this year, probably because I preached so much about it. I had trouble getting barley, but it's really just not an easy substitute. Yeah, back 20 years ago, there were a lot more lofts and clubs in my area. It was pretty impressive. It was a hotbed for pigeon fanciers, but not so much anymore. There's still some great competition. There's excellent fanciers that would win anywhere in the world in my area, but just the numbers aren't there like they once were. Thanks for your transparency with your methods, and you've freely given your time and energy to those of us who are new to the sport. Well, Jason, I'm glad I could help. When I started this a year ago, I had a YouTube channel for like 10 years. I didn't do anything with it. I figured I would document a lot of what I do, and I wasn't sure which direction it was going to go. And I've been really pleased. I'm having fun. It's a nice distraction for me to do these videos, although they're terrible. My editing is terrible, and I'm not the fanciest with what I do, but the ideas are there. Hopefully, I get the point across, and if I can help, great. As many of you know, I don't put a lot of time into the birds. I don't put a lot of training into the birds. I go to the lofts, the race team, old birds. I go there like 5 minutes in the morning, feed them in and out, boom, boom, gone. And they'd only train 1 day a week. They'd race, they'd be fed, and they just flew amazing. And I chronicled in one of my videos like the procedure that I took my birds through some of the long distance races. And you'll be amazed at how little work properly prepared pigeons need if their body weight is right and you feed them correctly. Problem is a lot of old guys are resistant to change. Yeah, well, whether it's the club or whatever, a lot of the old timers, they don't change. They're doing the same thing their grandfathers did. And I see it in the sport all the time. And they look at me like they don't believe me, or they think I'm not telling the truth, that I don't use any medication. I don't flock treat the birds. I feed them a certain way. I don't train the birds hardly at all. And they fly to the top, and they'll fly like way out in front in a lot of occasions. So it can be done. It's just you have to commit to it. You have to work at it. And, you don't need a ton of time. But again, a lot of people do what their grandfathers did. They're doing the same thing. And if they're not going to change, they're not going to compete against someone like me that's always looking for an edge. I want an edge. I want to be super competitive with as little amount of time as possible. So if you can put those together and still be competitive, then that's a good thing. Because, we all have families, we have jobs, we're busy, and you can't just spend 24 hours a day messing with pigeons. What do you recommend to a new fancier in the sport as far as sending birds to one-loft races? Well, they have to be super healthy. I think I did a video. If I think of it, I'll attach it on, what I do when I send them out to one-loft races. They have to be vaccinated. They can't miss one feeding through the whole process of the breeders. They have to have plenty of minerals. You have to vaccinate them. I would send them about eight weeks old, but I would start with lesser races. Don't go crazy with the big dollar races until you kind of know what you have pigeon-wise. Start with, maybe enter the Gulf Coast Classic, enter some of the convention races, get a test, spend a couple $100 to test them instead of, $1,500 or, $800, $600, whatever the prices would be. But, a lot of new guys can do really well, but most of it is the care, quality birds, prepped right, cared, vaccinated, not lacking anything. Give yourself a bit of an advantage going into a one-loft race. Do you breed specifically for one-loft race and club? I race those birds separately, or do you mix the families? Yeah, my birds are all the same. The same birds I race are the same birds that are winning and flying and performing in one-loft races. There's no difference. I think that I'm at an advantage because I can test my birds and because I race them myself and see what's good or what families are performing. But yeah, it's the same pigeon. There's no, there are people that keep strictly one-loft race birds or buy birds that have performed in one-loft races and send their babies back to those one-loft races. And it seems to have worked. There seems to be a lot of success there. But yeah, I just race my birds, and I use the same pigeons for everything. Let's see. I got an input from Gabby, and 10 generations of crossing and developed my own family. I still call it a Gabby pigeon. Yeah, well, it's funny. If, say Gabby Vendidabila bought a Maurice Cassard pigeon this morning, brought it to his loft, it became a Gabby Vendidabila pigeon. So on the pedigree, it would be Gabby Vendidabila. Only in America, if the 10 generations of you messing with the pigeons, technically it's your bloodline. I've had some of these. I'm still winning with pigeons I had from the 70s and 80s. And they mixed in these other bloodlines. And, but at 10, everybody tends to go with the European name. And that's just what we do. Let's see. Yeah, they're tough races, Taiwan, Philippines, and everywhere. You'll find some tough races. I guess the Stefan Reed's still being raised in Europe. Well, the Belgians tend to blend pigeons in, whereas other places like the UK, America, we want to keep our families, straight but they're blended in. In the United Kingdom, there's still some Van Reets that they would call pure, and I've kept them pure mainly because they're still super birds, and I use them to cross into the other families. But and everybody wants them pure. But again, like the Freak, a hen I had, she was half Van Reet and tremendous breeder. A lot of superstar breeders have been part Van Reet for me and for many. But yeah, they're still around. Can too much hybrid vigor be bad? I mean, I see most of us get caught up in that 10th grade biology course, the genetics course, and they inbreed, line breed, outcross for hybrid vigor. Don't waste your time. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, total crosses, unrelated pigeons. Don't try to inbreed birds and then cross them to get this hybrid vigor. It's not practical. Most of the superstars are bred from total crosses. Most of the big winners are total crosses, unrelated pigeons, and with multiple different families in the background. And the top, like the Europeans and the top Belgians, they know this also, and they inbreed for sale to America and China and the UK, and then for themselves they mess with the crosses. Thank you very much. I watch all your videos. So helpful. Being a new flyer, any help is good, but you helping in every angle is awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I enjoy it, and hopefully I can help. And I put out everything that I do, and there's a lot of ways to success. This is ways that works for me, and it works for me without medication, without a lot of training, with really good pigeons. I mean, ultimately you need really good pigeons. It's not like I'm entering 20 and I'm getting 20 ahead. 5 hens this old bird season, 5 hens did the job for me. Without those 5 hens, if I had any of those, 1 or 2 of them, I would have had a great season. But those 5 hens they were incredible. They were amazing. And so great pigeons really help get the job done. Do you think One Love races should do random drug tests on birds coming in? Yeah, it's not a bad idea. The big races do. I know like some of the major One Love races will test the winning pigeons. It's probably a good idea. You'd have to have like a third party come in and test the birds and make sure there's no games being played by, somebody's paying off the loft manager or something. 99.9% of the time it's no issue. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Offer more transparency. I'm all for that. For those people who can't find the time to bring their birds on training tosses, get the book, The Flag Flying System. But yeah, I heard a lot about the flag flying system. And again, if you can, flag fly them a couple times a week, get some work, feed them right, it's probably enough. With me, it takes a lot of time to flag fly them. I'd rather, my brother will usually take them on a training toss, or I'll put them on a training truck at least once a week. Usually I like to train Tuesdays and Thursdays. They race Saturdays, they train Tuesday, they train Thursday, then they race again. And that's pretty much my schedule. I'm from the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. 18 to 24 months from getting started. Not easy. A simple answer. But if I wanted to get into the sport, One Loft races, what's good game plan to start with? I mean, I'm not sure about your competition in the Virgin Islands, but yeah, probably the easiest way, if you have a family and not a lot of time, would be to, breed the pigeons into the One Loft races, follow them on the internet, and have fun that way. I mean, the One Loft races has allowed many to participate in the sport that couldn't normally do it because of time, and something along those lines. It'll work. How come I'm not chasing the hype like the kiddos? Well, I mean, I have a daughter of Best Kittle, and I like her. The only thing is she laid 4 eggs this year and she hasn't laid again. So real disappointing. But I mean, I talked to Thomas, and they're awesome. So I'm not worried about her. I have a very good Kittle cock. He's bred out of a Olympic Rosette. He's bred out of a sister to like the mother of Kittle. And I'm trying him. But again, it's not like, I'll see how they do. And again, I mean, I have really good pigeons already, and if they're good, they'll stay. If they're not, they'll go. But yeah, I don't get too excited about chasing families or anything like that. I was probably more so years ago. And if you go to Belgium and you buy from the neighbor of the superstar, who's probably, might be just as good, and you can save a few bucks. But again, those birds are good. They've been winning all over, and I didn't expect them to do that good, but they've been winning for pretty much everybody who touched them. But I think a lot of it is when people add cross sprint families into their birds, it gets a little more punch to them. They have a little more little quickness or quick orientation or faster, whatever. But they've been very, very good pigeons, and better than I thought they were going to be. So that's really good. Should there be any reason my birds aren't loft flying? I've been feeding them a little over 1 tablespoon a day, and I'm putting them on a 50-50 balance. You're probably not feeding them enough. I would up the mix and feed them 50%. If you just loft flying, 50% grain, 50% barley, feed them once a day until they leave barley. Just keep throwing them the feed. Once they start leaving a little barley, a handful of barley, they've had enough. They'll fly like crazy. I think they're a little hungry, and they're not going to fly. That's not a lot of feed if you want them to fly. So up the feed, and they should be fine. I can't thank you enough for teaching me as much as you have. I'm only a second year into pigeons, and I have learned a lot from you. Medication to borax baths. Thank you. Well, that's good, Tim. I'm glad I could help. And I figured this would be this YouTube thing would be a good avenue for me to put information out to a lot of people. I mean, I spend a lot of time answering questions and emails and calls. And if the videos can really maybe help also. And then if you put questions in comments, if you comment after this video, you put questions, I can answer it probably for 10 people, instead of answer it individually for everyone. Do you think local racing might test birds better because they have to break in the winds, or do you think the true quality of the birds and make one loft better? No, I think local racing tests birds better than one loft racing. I think that a lot of times one loft racing, there's no breaking involved. The pigeons, they're coming, and more often than not, you'll find with the one loft race birds, the ones that end up winning had some adversity. They got off course, they got lost, they got messed up, they had to think. And the birds that are constantly flying to the front, never had an issue, will get to the final race and there'll be a problem. There'll be something comes up. It's a tough race. It's an odd race, a strange day. And then those birds that have always never had a kink the whole season don't perform. And the one that got messed up had to figure something out. That bird wins the race. So I think test them in the club if you can, and then enter them in the one loft races after that. Would you consider Kittle the next great pigeon? Kittle's been good for a long time, and Best Kittle has been incredible the last 5 or 6 years. And I was hearing about Kittle, in the UK 10 years ago, probably. And I probably should have invested in some then and made some money. But again, you can't, it's like playing the stock market. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. And I think that's those pigeons, Kittle and Best Kittle, are going to leave a good mark on the sport. How big a mark? We're going to be able to revisit that in 20 years if people are still messing with the family. Let's see. Hopefully you can feature you on. Yeah, definitely. We can do a YouTube channel someday. Absolutely. Hello from California. If your celibates hen pair together, does this cause you problems? No, it's funny that when people used to raise celibate hens, they would always claim, if those hens made up, that's the end of it. Well, I've had national ace pigeons, first national ace and fifth national ace, and the hens were mated the whole season. One of my best hens this year, 5-year-old hen, she was mated the whole season, fly to the top. They lay an occasional set of eggs. The difference with the celibate hens, when they're not, the hens don't drive. When the cocks drive the hen, it causes the egg process to go fast, to pick up. When the hens just cuddle and they hang in the corner of the loft and they don't drive, they lay. I may have got, one set of eggs off a few pair of hens this old bird season. And a lot of times they're cuddling, but I've had those mated hens. They fly like crazy. They've been awesome. So I don't worry about it at all. Nothing to stress about. Do you sell young birds? I only see breeders on the website. Yeah, most of the time. I just haven't had time to put some babies on the website. I've been trying to get them out to one loft races, and right now I'm weaning birds off all my best breeders. So I'll be putting some really nice youngsters, high quality youngsters on the Pigeon store fairly soon and through the fall and stuff. Is it true that one loft pigeons can't fly club or vice versa? No, all the one loft pigeons, they all originated from combine or federation or whatever races. They all started, they ended up winning and performing usually somewhere else. They got shipped to the one loft race. They performed there. And so like a lot of these famous one loft birds are from families of birds that were winning in federations, combines, or nationals and all that stuff. What advice do you have for a small loft, 20 or 30 birds? I mean, yeah, I would educate them the best you can. If you can watch my educating young bird video, and then nail the feeding. You have to nail the feeding. If you are only entering a small group, you gotta be putting your birds at a bigger advantage to win. Most of the birds are shipped way too heavy to the races, even the long races, that people ship them round and full. If you're shipping them round and full, they're way too fat for the races, all distance races. So I would nail the body weight and educate them, get them breaking. And that means finding a fancier that you can meet in the middle and train them together. Or even if your buddy lives, a mile away and he lets his young birds out and you throw your flock up into his while they're circling. After 10 times, your birds are going to be like, these pigeons aren't leaving and they're just going to break. So if you have the time, teach them to break. And that's a good tip that you guys can use. Find a friend and you can go back and forth. You let your flock into his flock when his are exercising around the loft. He does the same at your flock. And the birds learn, hey, these pigeons aren't ever going to leave. And they'll go home. They'll after 5 or 7 times, they're just going to get in the flock and go home. And now all of a sudden you have pigeons breaking. And, you're kicking the guys like me that, you're kicking my butt because I don't do that stuff. My question is, what do you do with the unraised birds as far as feeding and training? I mean, a lot of the pigeons I'll just, breed. I'll put them in a flight pen, and I just have feeders in front of all my birds all the time because I just go over in the morning. So, yeah, they're just sitting and eating and, getting their minerals and their feed. Nothing special. Excuse me. So, yeah, nothing to really worry about. In the United States, which state has the hottest race course? It's tough to tell. I'm not really sure. Most of the U.S., the racing is fairly easy. In Oregon, when I was out there years ago, they flew across a mountain range, which was pretty scary. And I'm sure there's some tough places, but I think that most of the fanciers, most of the combines look for a relatively easier race course. And, they don't want to lose birds. They don't want to run into problems. And even like a place like Florida, they race from the north and they have prevailing north winds. And, the guys in the top of the state should go south, race all headwinds. And that would be kind of really cool, tough racing. But again, it's difficult on the birds. It's difficult on the fancier. Most places, they want to race fairly easy race courses. My other question, when training young birds, do you get a few busted that come back late or the next day? How do you manage them? Yeah, if they come late or they're tired, I'll give them a couple days off. I have a lot of those like big marker bands, like big pink and orange marker bands. So I'll usually throw a marker band on a bird if I have to give it some time off, or if it's late, usually rest. I rest my birds more than probably most. I give them days off, give them a week off. If something doesn't look right, it's amazing. Like a lot of people look for a medicine bottle, and if something doesn't look right, rest the bird. And even on my race team, I'll have like a bird, get hit by a hawk and it won't do anything for 2 or 3 weeks. It'll be in the racing loft. Well, that bird will have the most vitality, will be acting better than the whole team, and it's just been sitting around. So again, rest works wonders, and don't be afraid to give birds time off. You have to be the coach. You have to manage the team, and look at them as individuals, and you'll be fine. So hope everybody enjoyed. If you can like my videos, subscribe, and share them with your friends. And we'll do this again another month or so. And this is Frank McLaughlin, McLaughlin Lofts. And thank you so much for joining me. And we'll keep it going. Thank you.